Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 65 of Makai-World Reviews. It is I, the Zone of Makai, a master of minds and men. This is the last day, the last week of Takashi Miike month, but don't worry, I may have saved the best for last, but I will be the judge of that, obviously. Where today I look at his famous horror classic in Audition. Let's not muck about anymore. Let's all keep our feet on and let's get to it. Of course, please like, please subscribe. Like I say every week, I'm trying to improve this channel. I need your help to do it. So hit that red button. If you do it now, I'll shut the fuck up about it. Audition, directed, of course, by Takashi Miike, the man of the month. Miike is a very good director, known for his bizarre movies, his horror movies, his family movies. Man has done it all, and in a fairly general sense, he has done it all very competently. Movies tend not to dip into the bad spectrum all that often. The screenplay was done by Daisuke Tegan, but he didn't change an incredible amount from Ryu Murakami's original novel. He did change enough to give it the edge Miike is known for. I'm a huge Murakami fan. I read In the Miso Soup, Coin Lock Babies, Piercing, and of course Audition, and I really enjoy his work. It's a very strange, visceral, blunt. He's a very good writer that I look forward to reading more of, and I hope saying this might interest people in his work. He is not a well-known author, and I think that's a shame. Starring Ryu Ashibashi, known for his work on this, Suicide Club, and the first two of the American remake of The Grudge. Solid, dependable actor. And Rihi Shinya, she was a fashion model before this, to the surprise of no one, as she is beautiful. Of course, has a compelling, almost dangerous look to her. Since then, she's done a number of things. This probably being the most famous, but Tokyo Gore Police and Hell Driver were things I've also seen her in. Release date for this was March 3rd, 2000. What came out the same week? Drowning Mona. Absolute waste of people like Danny DeVito, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Casey Affleck in this forgettable and unfunny crime drama. Not worth a watch, frankly. It's not even worth a mention. And What Planet Are You From? Question mark. Slightly less awful movie, but still an incredible waste of Gary Shandling, Ben Kingsley, and John Goodman. It's at best a movie that gets a few chuckles in its 100-plus minute runtime. Now to the plot. Plot is pretty simple. It's a man looking to get some strange. Really, that is it basically. Of course, I'll go into some more depth. We follow Shigeharu, who has some trouble with women, as his wife died a few years back from an undisclosed illness, and he raised his son alone until sometimes during his early teens. The son thinks his dad should find a new wife. So, of course, since he works in the movie industry in some vague way, him and his buddy Yashuhisa devise a plan to take people who are not casted for a movie Yashuhisa is doing, cast them as potential mates for Shigeharu, and hope a relationship forms. Exploit them for potential in a movie role down the road. I mean, I'm sure that's what they think, but I'll talk about more about my feelings about that part of the plot. In due course, he meets a lovely, of course, younger woman that he is instantly enchanted with by the names of Asami, who has an appropriately mysterious past fit for a romantic movie or a horror movie, and of course, he later asks her out on a date of sorts. Despite their dates going rather well, if not a bit boring, cracks beginning to form or are revealed in her foundation. She lied in her audition about her career and background. Her job no longer exists. Looking further into it, there are a number of missing men in her history. Interwoven in that are strange scenes of Asami in her dilapidated apartment with a mysterious bag. But Shigeharu seems to not notice all the red flags. Just like me, he becomes more and more under the spell of the lovely Asami, and finally they sleep together, where she lies about some scars on her legs and demands he love her, only her. This leads to the last 45 minutes, where Shigeharu learns about the molestation she suffered in her youth, her lies are revealed, and her sickening predilection towards violence is revealed. Just for a climactic showdown, where Shigeharu confronts her, but he's drugged, tortured. Don't worry, I'll get into all of this in a little bit. But she is caught by the son, who in a scramble knocks her down the stairs, seemingly killing her after a bit, leaving the fate of them all hanging in the balance and unknown. Of course, there's some ambiguity to that as well, and I'll go into that. So let's talk about everything else. There's a lot going on in this film I want to discuss. Now, by design, this movie, or at least the last 40 minutes or so, is almost formed like a standard, formulaic, and almost boring Japanese romance movie, of which I've seen enough to say that comfortably. Therein lies some of the genius of it. You have no concept of what you're going to get with this. You know the hammer is coming because this movie is based on a novel and advertised as a horror movie, but the nature of it is so jarring that when it takes you by surprise, it's been quite a while since I've seen it, and I can still say that I just stare and shake my head at the nature of some of the reveals. They're very shocking. That being said, the conversations outside the one with Yashuhisa, who is the only person with any sort of real clarity in this film, are staggeringly boring. They're tedious. And, I trace that back to the Murakami books, as he is known for his tiresome conversations to represent the banality of Japan, which he hates. I want to talk about Murakami in the book in relation to this. While they are different, this has his sense of nihilism, of anger, of hatred for the salaryman, and a good bit of a women too that Murakami has in all of his books. The ones I've read, anyways. He has a very cynical look of Japan. All Japanese are lonely, we are told, and I think the ability to take what could have been a standard romance fare and do this to it is a mark of a genius. Well, I have some which I have some regard for. There's some debate on if the book or movie is better, and that's not one I'm going to get into here, as I think there are merits to both. This has Miike all over it. His flair and style. Well, the book is very much a Murakami work, and that has a more psychedelic anger to it. In relation to the stilted conversations, I do want to say this, and it may seem to fly in the face of what I said before, but it's sort of interesting to see that banality, to see these people going about their everyday lives, living, and I want to talk about the relationships shortly, but all these interconnected relationships, workings, talkings, going out with friends, dating, discussing normal everyday stuff. It's interesting because of its counterbalance to the horrors that are layered upon our characters. Totally a 180 for them, to confront a pure monster and how shocking it truly is. I want to talk about the counterbalance of parenting as far as relationships go, because that's very much what we get here. With Shigeru and his son, we have a loving, if not necessarily casual relationship. They go fishing, they talk about their day. He's supportive of his son dating and meets his girlfriend, and they talk like people who care about each other. And we're shown them caring about what the other is doing and is interested in. There's a whole dinosaur bones subplot I would have loved to have them flesh out. The son going to look for newly revealed dinosaur bones. And we look at Asami's relationship with her father, stepfather, but still, and it's, as far as we know, the first man really in her life. And he was supposed to protect her, to be there for her, care about her, encourage her, love her. He didn't. He failed on all fronts. He molested her. He abused her in horrible ways, burning her and forcing her to dance for him. Dance. That was her only escape. Dancing, ballet. She could be somewhere else when she danced, somewhere far away with someone who cared about her. I think the contrast we were shown is huge in very powerful parts of the film. The dancing I did want to mention because she said she injured her hips, so she had to stop. I think that was it. That's what sparked the killings, the torture. Her outlet was gone, decayed and crumbled. She mentioned that she lost her dream, that she was accepting death. I think her hip injury was the first in a downward slope for her. Not excusing her at all, but it was the last thing that could help her feel normal, and that was gone. And the men who abused her, truly and in her mind, would suffer for it. Since we are on Asami, the scene of her madness are horrific. She has a guy in a bag with no tongue, missing fingers, all messed up, exposed to an unknown tortures, and she feeds him by puking into a dog bowl and making him eat it. It's unknown who this man is exactly, as he's not the bar owner, maybe the record producer, who knows. And the torture she inflicts on Shigeru are extreme. She shoves needles around his eyes, saws off his foot with piano wire, mazes his son, and finally she is knocked down the steps and breaks her neck. Though this brings some things into question. Did any of the violence happen? Does the man in the bag exist? Was she abused as a child? I think this, because I'm not covering any new territory here. Trust me, you can look at any of this online, but we don't actually see any of this stuff occur. We don't see her being molested. We don't see the man in the bag. And there's a moment where we see Shigeru near the very end thinking he dreamed the whole thing up and awakens back to the night they first had sex. But all this stuff is in his head. We see him thinking these things are real, but it's ambiguous if they really are. He's putting the pieces into place based on her shady background, but we get no real confirmation it happens at all. There's one scene she is waiting by the phone with a bag in the background. That could be filled with anything as far as I know. It could be garbage. I don't know how I feel about that, but it's something that is impossible not to consider. I don't care for the casting part. I think it's disingenuous and frankly smacks of some misogyny. Some women don't know they aren't getting a part in a movie, and the fact that he wants to ask one of them out under the pretense is pretty awful, considering there's absolutely no reason for any one of them not to think that if they sleep with this guy, they will absolutely get a part in a movie, or another part in a different movie. It's pretty tasteless, even in 1999. This was not a great thing, and seems cruel and Weinsteinian to these women, and that's a phrase I just coined. We would even get some of the sadness of these ladies' lives. The one talk about has tried to commit suicide and was committed. The one talks about getting into porn and is asked by Yashikisha to stay for another job. It's kind of funny. That last one. These women are really presented as dispensable, disposable, and mostly useless. It just rubs me the wrong way that they're thrown away, and we see their pain, and they're hoping that maybe a role could get them out of these slum lives that they have, and not. Speaking of Yashikisha, he's played by Jun Kunimura, and I love him. He's in a ton of movies I've seen. He's never the main guy, but he's always a solid hand. Black Rain, Hard Boiled, This, Ishi the Killer, Tomy, Godzilla Final Wars, and Shin Godzilla, and tons more. I just like him. He's a really distinct face. He stands out to me. Lots of personality. There are these weird scenes of a girl Shingiryu works with who seems to not give a shit about. Like she tells him she's getting married, and he's like, "Oh, that's cool." And then we get another few scenes of her like looking at him longingly or strangely. Can't wrap my head around what faces she's trying to make or the point of those scenes. It was supposed to be to counterbalance like he could go with this woman, but she said she's getting married. I don't really know. Soundtrack. Most of the music in this is incidental, or just short bursts or something, which add to the scenes as they are given a lot of room to breathe. Asami has the most musical cues for her background scenes and whatnot, and it all works, especially because there's a lot about dancing. It's serviceable, not anything I really noticed intently, and certainly not anything meant for something more than to help drive home those hard moments. Overall, I think Audition is a film a guy like Hitchcock would like. It subverts expectations at the time and the landscape when what was becoming increasingly harder to do, especially in Japanese cinema, with Ringu having come out the year before, is sort of and that sort of transformed the landscape of Japanese horror into a pop horror fest for the conceivable future up until this day. Not to say there was not quality horror films coming out, there were every year just about, but the mainstream idea for something a little more digestible was supernatural and bland, frankly. It's a good movie. It's an interesting movie, and it's an accomplishment in its own right. It is just about all the praise it gets. I wouldn't put this at the top of any one of my best horror lists. I don't think, but it does something it sets out to accomplish. It gives us a genuinely scary dating scenario. Helped solidify Takashi Miike as one of the most dependable directors in Japan, where he is still cultivating that moniker, and it gives us a terrifying face for female destruction in Asami. Yeah, I like this movie, and I would absolutely say if you've not seen it, please take the time to do so. But be wary, the gore in this is not your typical Hollywood fare. Even by today's standards, it's pretty gross and done so well that it's almost convincing. Well, that not only ends my review of Audition, but of Miike month entirely. Do you enjoy these theme months? Because I plan on doing more. Do you enjoy my review of Audition? Which Takashi Miike film is your fave? Maybe I'll review it if you let me know. So let me know down below. Also, please like, comment, subscribe, get on Patreon, and let me know what you want me to review. Also, please check out my Instagram. That's Demon Peaks for daily Twin Peaks memes. And my podcast, the Dark Peaks Podcast, on YouTube and various other podcast platforms. Next month, I'm doing another theme month. For all 5 weeks of March, we'll be looking at slightly lesser known Lovecraft, H.P. Lovecraft inspired films, starting off with The Void. This has been the Tono Makaya, Masterminds and Men. Thank you very much, and goodbye.